a team that just sold a year ago, that's sold again. And that's the LA Lakers, one of the greatest franchises in sports history. Was bought by Mark Walter last year. He bought a controlling interest of the LA Lakers, which was valued at $10 billion. And he's now made the decision to turn around and sell it just a year later for $12.5 billion. So simple math, folks,
Little
at least
$2
just
billion
based on the valuation,
flip.
$2.5 billion in a year's time.
Little
That
flip.
is one hell of a business deal. Now, he's selling it, and this is where it gets a little bit controversial, to John Kushner and Bob Iger. Bob Iger, obviously the CEO of Disney. John Kushner has relations back, Kushner family, Jared Kushner, which is tied back to the White House. So obviously people start to get very up in arms about that. But both Iger and Kushner were actually involved in the expansion process for a Las Vegas NBA team. However, they pivoted quickly and rather aggressively to try to buy the Lakers. Now, the sale still needs approval from the NBA's Board of Governors, which could take like a few weeks probably. But I mean, who's going to say no to a $12.5 billion valuation on an NBA franchise? Like, that's that high tide that raises all boats. And I would assume that everyone else on the board is going to look around and be like, yeah, we're okay with that. Like, we'd love for the Lakers to be valued at that, which puts them amongst some of the most valued franchises in all of sports around the globe. Now, again, here's where things get kind of interesting. Mark Walter, who built his financial empire on the insurance industry, well, he's under federal investigation for alleged tax fraud by other companies tied to the billionaire. U.S. prosecutors in Manhattan are examining whether the Delaware Life Insurance Company and the Clear Spring Life and Annuity Company failed to disclose that their private credit holdings were backed by other Walter-controlled ventures. Now, there's also a simultaneous SEC investigation going on too. So the thought is that maybe there's kind of a quid pro quo that's an arm's length away, where maybe these investigations will go away now because of the sale. And so Walter makes his profit, doesn't have to worry about the investigations into how he was able to buy the team in the first place in exchange for selling the team, this legendary franchise, to Kushner and Iger. So that's the backstory why there's a lot of people who are kind of
So he
upset
had to
about
get
this.
out of there.
Well, and that's the other part of it, is there's a thought that maybe there was pressure on him. He was forced to sell it. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories around it. So we could take it at face value or we can go down that rabbit hole. My thing is either way, I'm not sure. I guess this is a good thing for the Lakers. Maybe it's not, because we've had ownership changes over the past couple of years and typically this doesn't happen. But I look at this and just say, all right, the valuation makes the NBA look extremely healthy. For the Lakers to be valued at $12.5 billion, that's great. My question is, like, do Kushner and Iger have enough capital to invest into this team to make them what they can be? Because we also have a story about Matt Ishbia, who's lost about $600 million of wealth over the past, couple of years, betting on basically interest rates going down. And that's going to have an impact on the Phoenix Suns and how that team is run and the ability they have to build out a roster. So that's kind of the bigger picture conversation is like, when you pay that much for a franchise, are you still going to be liquid enough to be able to help them and really Luka Doncic build around this team?
I don't know. I don't know if they have the resources to do it, but I do know this. They had the resources to get it, as you mentioned, and that's some serious resources. What you do from there, uh, I don't know that it even really matters, Q. I mean, the economics of it math out, right? This guy just cashed in for $2.5 billion profit on his investment. The value of this team is it would take a cataclysmic happening for it to lose the value that it holds. I mean, the Lakers brand is an established, historical, strong anchor brand. And it's in an amazing market. So to get your hands on this type of an asset, I mean, we often have the conversation sometimes. Do owners really get into it to win games, or do they get into it as it's an investment? Is it a place to place your money, or whatever it may be that they're, what their financial plan or what they want their outcome to be. I sometimes wonder if winning is even part of the equation. You would hope so, and you would think so, because that's what's equated to sports. But there is another side. Like, some of these people that own these teams, they don't even like sports. They don't relate to athletes. It's an investment, and it's purely based off of a business decision, and they have the resources and the means to be able to do it. So, and people that don't relate to athletes, they're very different. They're very different than people who are athletes or relate to it. So I would say, if you're able to get a hold of an asset like this, I don't even know that it matters if they can put the resources behind it for the team to win. They got Luka, so they have a franchise guy. And as long as they can keep him healthy and market it the way that they need to, they still have LeBron James as well for now, so to speak. And they just have leverageable, assets on the team that also can go with saying that, we're at least trying to put a team out. Well, that's LeBron.
Well,
yeah, it's LeBron.
Yeah, but I mean, we're not saying that.
I was going to say, though. I saw what I did.
I was going to question if you think that they would have built the roster the way they did after this offseason. Like, we got a lot of white guys. Let's just throw what it is. Like, it drew a lot of interest from folks.
I was going to go that direction, but
I'm just asking you. Like, they just bought the team. Like, was that an encouraging thing? Because clearly they paid $2.5 billion more than what Walter did. I would have thought the value went down.
They might have looked at how they made those moves and made it an all-white squad and was like, you know what? This is the perfect time to buy. I don't know. I don't know what their motivations are. But
I would have thought, based on what they did this offseason, they would have sold. They would have sold at a loss for like $2 billion, not making $2.5 billion. I'm just saying, like, we don't. The short-term outlook. I mean, we'll see what they're able to end up doing. I don't want to downplay it, but I just, LeBron's not there anymore. You seem to think there's such a windfall. It's like he left, and all of a sudden the franchise got more valuable. I don't know if that's like the optimism of it, but
the brand just holds its value. That's what I would say.
It keeps increasing in value. Or maybe when LeBron left, they left Bronny on his own, and that's how it increased in value. They're like, all right, now we got the younger James that will carry on the legacy as an LA Laker.
Dang. Okay.
I'm just saying, it was interesting to see all of this, and we don't see, unless there's some sort of scandal, unless there's something that happens illegally that would tarnish the league with that particular owner, you don't see these sorts of transactions happening in 365 days. It just doesn't. I believe Mark Walter bought this team back in October. I mean, dude, it's August. It wasn't even a full calendar year.
Yeah.
And so to think that even Kushner and Iger in their conversations could pivot that quickly from, looking at having to try to put a franchise or expansion franchise in Las Vegas, maybe how difficult that would be, maybe the cost of that. Maybe they thought their money was better spent with what they currently have with the Lakers. And I do tend to believe there's less risk, right? Like, you're buying a storied franchise that carries, over generations. And obviously where it's at, the number 2 media market, everything that goes along with that, even though you're sharing the market with the Clippers, although they're kind of an afterthought, there is something to that. Hey, maybe this was an easier decision for them because they don't have to start anew. They don't have to start with trying to figure out how you're going to build up to be a competitive franchise in a Las Vegas market that's going to be welcoming a baseball team that's already got a football team that's struggled so far to really find their feet or find their ground. It seems like kind of a no-brainer.
WNBA. And
hockey.
They play hockey.
There's that. That's true. There is that. The hockey expansion team didn't have any issues having success. But I think it would be harder in basketball. I mean, they'd really have to bank on trying to get a superstar to go there. But I look at this and think it's a no-brainer, but also how quick this changed. And looking at Mark Walter's situation, it's hard not to be suspect. I mean, it comes off and feels that way. Like, hey, if I sell this, man, maybe all this will go away and I'm going to make a profit off of it, which is kind of wild to think.
And it's already done, right? It's solidified. It's done. It's happened.
It has to be approved by the NBA Board of Governors. and
And
I'm
they
not
will.
sure if
They
they're
will
gonna.
approve it. Why turn
Well,
it into a messy? It's bad for business if they turn it into a messy situation, right?
yes, it's just I look at this and think you also have Bob Iger's not young by any means. He's 75 years old, and I'm not saying that like, he should be able to purchase the team because of his age, but and obviously John Kushner is
Dang,
way
ageism.
younger.
Uh-huh.
Well, the reality is like if it was just okay, I'll put it this way: if it was just John Kushner buying the franchise, which I'm assuming he needed more help, raising some of the capital, even though he's got Thrive Capital and he's been extremely successful. He's a billionaire in his own right for what he's been able to do. But I'm sure the Bob Iger portion of this helps with the NBA giving Kushner the approval to buy because they need that steady veteran, wise hand behind all of this. And so Kushner obviously extend out, but like Iger at 75, is he going to be as involved in the day-to-day operations? I don't know. Time will tell. But I look at this and just wonder, are you a little suspect too? Is there a conflict of interest? Obviously Bob Iger spent a long time at Walt Disney, right? ESPN. Like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? There's a lot of things that, you wonder if there's not a conflict of interest, but if Disney ESPN is going to get, a little bit of that kind of better treatment and looking at for the different rights, even though the NBC now has some of the broadcast rights. So it's just, the whole thing draws a lot of questions more than answers in my mind.
Well, cool thing about sports that I've always loved is that whatever it's going to be, it's going to happen and it's going to develop. And as you mentioned the other day, the media is going to cover it, and you're ultimately, sometimes we'll find ourselves saying, what are you ultimately trying to learn, or know, what do you want to know about it, or what's left, or what's on the other side of it? Sports media jumps on everything. And this is one of those stories that, while it will go away, much like any other story that's out there, while it will go away, there's always that one reporter, that one person that's paying attention to all of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And if something drops, if something hits, they're going to report it.